kind, compassionate, positive. These traits have been used to describe me my whole life, and I've represented them by avoiding conflict, constantly apologizing, and always agreeing as to never hurt people's feelings, because being agreeable and accommodating is often perceived as highly deserving of praise. But the praise I received for my acts of kindness made me vulnerable of getting taken advantage of. And now, as I reflect on the form of kindness I had adopted, which implied vulnerability, I realize that it diverged from how I had originally learned to be kind. It was my mother who taught me to act with sincerity and compassion, and it was her example that guided my understanding of kindness. Whenever we would travel and encounter someone in need, she'd readily pull out any change she had and encourage me to approach them. Regardless of their circumstance, I've learned to treat each person with dignity and respect, and rather than focusing on individual struggles, my mom has taught me to uplift others. Through her example, I've come to realize that kindness isn't simply a trait we possess, it's a responsibility we carry out and embrace in our every interaction. Over recent years, however, there's been a noticeable shift in societal attitudes towards kindness. In 2021, researchers from the University of Sussex conducted a study known as the Kindness Test. They found that the most common barriers to kindness were concerns over kindness being misinterpreted, almost 30% of which came from the belief that kindness was seen as a weakness. And while there have always been individuals who choose not to prioritize consideration for others if it doesn't serve their own interests, an increasing number of people have begun to agree with this mindset, believing that such independence is justified because they don't owe anyone anything. This mindset has also infiltrated the trending self-care culture on social media, in which influencers advocate for us to be confident and to stop comparing ourselves to others, with the overarching message being that life rewards people who prioritize themselves. Needless to say, self-prioritization isn't inherently selfish. It allows us to set boundaries and focus on our well-being, but it becomes so when we pursue it at the expense of others, in a way that disregards their well-being and dignity. So in a world where individualism is often prioritized, we must recognize that our actions impact those around us. And it's simple acts of kindness and consideration that are reminders that despite our differences, we are connected. And this idea has existed for a very long time. Emmanuel Levinas, a 20th century philosopher, emphasizes the inherent social responsibility we owe to those around us. Central to his philosophy is the concept of the other, which refers to any person or entity distinct from the self. When we encounter the face of the other, we are confronted with their humanity, which in turn imposes an ethical responsibility on us. We are responsible for the well-being and dignity of the other simply because they exist as vulnerable, unique individuals. However, with the rise of social media, instant messaging, and virtual interactions, it's become easier now than ever to disconnect from the humanity of others. We hide behind our screens, engage in online personas, and oftentimes forget that there's a real person on the other side. Our interactions play a crucial role in recognizing the humanity of others. When we treat them as anonymous entities, we dehumanize them and strip them away of their individuality and identity, forgetting that we owe respect to the intrinsic value they possess simply by virtue of being human. Instead, we should use every interaction as the opportunity to honor the humanity of others, to uplift and empower them. And with that, we can empower ourselves. When I was 7 years old, I learned the Hindu principle of seva, which is defined as simple, selfless service. At the time, I adopted the principle in whichever way a child could, given the extent of my abilities, through simple gestures such as running errands, sharing my belongings, and volunteering to help out wherever it was needed without trying to ask for anything in return. Though these actions were small, they left an undeniable impression on me. And I learned that my actions, no matter how small, hold value, and that gave me a sense of self-worth. As Uma Vishwanthan, an executive director of New Pluralist, once said, "Love is not just an emotion, it's our very existence. It's woven through all of creation. And the more we see it and the more we experience it, it allows our life to become an expression of that love." So extend this love to encompass both friends and strangers, providing support, sharing resources with those less fortunate, and treating everyone with dignity and respect. Let's embrace a more enlightened form of independence, one that celebrates our individuality while honoring our interconnectedness. Thank you.